So he's finally done it and called the election. Yes, fucking get in there! The man with a plan for running the country who couldn't even manage an umbrella in the pouring rain 10 yards from his own front door. His speech was as familiar as it was ridiculous, with all the usual shit about the economy improving, the Tories being the ones to take the country forward, and insinuations that Keir Starmer will somehow be dangerous for the UK. The campaign had started for the Tories at a launch event that Sky News wasn't allowed into, but GB News was. What are they scared of? The next day, in his first meeting with the general public, Sunak took questions in a McVitie's factory. One of the people in a high-vis jacket who asked a question turned out to actually be a Tory councillor. Surprise, surprise. McVitie's were quick to point out that it wasn't actually their factory, but a distribution warehouse. He then visited a Welsh brewery where he asked if everyone was looking forward to the football, totally unaware that Wales aren't even in the competition. Who advises him, for God's sake? I'm sorry, but it's impossible for a multimillionaire to try to relate to normal people. You just end up looking like a twat. Like having a photo op filling a car with petrol and not knowing how to use a contactless card, or asking a homeless person what their business plans are. They've lost a couple more big names who've resigned rather than face the electorate, Michael Gove and Andrea Leadsom, bringing the total of rats fleeing the sinking ship to over 70. And it means they need to find 150 candidates for the election to cover their seats and the ones currently held by other parties. They're starting to reveal their tax cutting policies after 14 years of increases them, including a reduction in inheritance tax. Inheritance tax will only ever affect the top 5% of earners, but they position it like it will affect everyone because they want it cut to enrich themselves even more. If you only remember one fact when the Tories talk economy, let it be this. Since 2019, food inflation has been 30%. A typical family, whatever that is now £5,883 worse off than in 2019. So enjoy that £900 a year the core Tories keep shouting about. And remember, the drop in inflation doesn't get backdated, so everything that's costing more won't be coming back down. And while you're paying higher taxes than ever before, with almost non existent public services, ask yourself where the money's gone. You might want to consider the increase in millionaires and billionaires and their wealth gains, including Rishi's £120 million increase this year. The Tories have announced another manifesto pledge to bring back national service at 18. Regular subscribers will remember I called this a couple of months ago. So look at your kids before you vote and ask if you're happy for them to be killed in a war that will only ever benefit the super rich, whose kids will no doubt avoid it. If you've got kids or grandkids who are 18 plus already, ask them to vote with their siblings in mind. Ask yourself too, how many people calling for this have served themselves? Because if they haven't, there was nothing stopping them doing their bit before taking up a lucrative career in, say, finance or working in their family business. They'll say this is optional along with some sort of community service, but they've decimated the armed forces with austerity, and you know how these things tend to develop. Labour have said they'll allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. It's their future that elections determine, especially relating to climate change, so that seems perfectly reasonable, but will scare the Tories shitless because they tend to have an older voting demographic. The Tories have attacked Labour's planned raid on VAT on private schools. How come it's called a raid when Labour do it, but it's just VAT when the Tories do? Oh, and it'll affect just 7% of families across the UK. But crucially, most of them will be Tory voters and, more importantly, Tory donors. In non-election news, the police have been told not to arrest criminals due to the lack of prison space. The party of law and order? Tough on crime? I think not. South West Water's parent company has announced an 8.6% increase in profits to 166.3 million, with increased dividends for shareholders. At the same time, local residents are being told they can't drink the water. They'll get getting increased bills though. The only way to sort this out is to nationalise the water companies, and the way to do that with no cost to the taxpayer is fine them so heavily that their investors pull out and the companies become worthless. That way, we won't have to pay anything for them. Rishi finally apologised on behalf of the government for the disgraceful delays in the contaminated blood scandal. It's true this has been overseen by consecutive parties in power, but it was Theresa May who set up the inquiry in 2015, so it's taken this particular government 9 years to get to this stage. Coincidentally, Labour will probably be in power by the time the payments start to be due, so there's another nice little trap for them. Talking of scandals, the inquiry into the post office scandal finally got to question with Paula Venables, the ex-post office boss. She managed some crocodile tears now she's truly in the frame, which is obviously more than she could do for the poor bastards who were charged, prosecuted, bankrupted, imprisoned, or committed suicide. Whoever's in government next really needs to be bringing prosecutions for this, Grenfell, and other scandals, and a good election manifesto would include legislation going forward to make individuals more personally responsible. It's going to be 6 weeks of slagging off and lies from the Tories, with Labour having to fight not only against them, but also the massive media backing. They have media that will print and broadcast anything the Tories ask them to, so be selective about where you get your information. There's a few things you can do to get better informed before the election. First is to subscribe to this channel and share content, and why not choose notifications while you're at it? Second, listen to a podcast called The Trawl, because politics doesn't have to be boring. Don't listen to the government lies, which is pretty much everything they say these days, and don't let them manipulate you. Question why they do things and how they will benefit. And finally, visit www.stopthetories.vote and find out how to vote tactically to get the fuckers out.